Welcome back to the Big Screen Bols Podcast, where you have myself, Caleb Kindle, and the web-slinging podcast host himself, co-host, I should say, Christian McCrite.
Thank you, and good morning or good evening.
Yep.
Good to be here.
You see, there's only two of us today, so...
That's right. We're going back to a classic format today.
Yep, exactly. Back to where we can have the real professionals on and talk the whole time.
The real bowls.
The real bowls still... please stand up.
That's right. The real host of the multiverse of bowls.
That, and if you guys are watching, I've got my arms out right now. It's summertime here. Got a sun's out, guns out. Even though it rained all day.
It was literally dark all day today. But today we're going to be talking about Sony's new Across the Spider-Verse, which is the sequel to Into the Spider-Verse, for those of you who haven't watched it or know nothing about it. And if you don't know anything about it, what are you doing? Let's get that out of the way. So the first 10 or so minutes of this is going to be spoiler free for those of you who want the review at the end of that chunk without having any spoilers at all, because there's a lot of stuff that happens. Honestly, that's probably like a good way of explaining this movie.
Yeah.
There's just a lot that happens.
And it's a pretty long movie as well, too.
It is.
In the grand scheme of things. What's the actual full time of it?
It's like 2 hours and 10 minutes, but it felt a little longer than that.
Yeah.
I think
it did, too, just because I watched it. Actually, I'm fresh. I watched it today at 10 o'clock, and I didn't get it out of there until 1, I think.
Yeah, he's fresh, ladies and gentlemen.
He's ready to give the hot takes.
He's dripping with anticipation.
And just sure drip. Swagger.
I just realized I only had one. I had one of my headphones off of my left ear. I was like, oh, I should probably fix that. Anyway, sorry about that.
Yeah, for this one as well too. I should have worn my Jordans, man. Just
for Jordans.
In memory of Morales, man. Miles Morales.
That's right. The GOAT.
The Spider-Man that has a lot of weird powers for no apparent reason.
Yeah, he has his electricity powers.
So yeah, I guess that's good to start off with. So Miles Morales this is a good segue to get into it here, but to really understand where the story had came from at first and where the beginning of this started is Miles Morales, which is kind of the person that succeeds Peter Parker in his universe as becoming the new Spider-Man. Peter Parker ends up passing away. There's a spider that bites this new kid, Miles Morales.
Yeah.
Sorry. And after he gets bitten, he has all these new powers, and then you see some more powers than what original Spider-Man had as well, too. One being invisibility that wasn't within the original canon-type powers, as well as electricity manipulation.
Yeah, he can create short bursts of electricity through his palms or his fingertips, something like that. And me, who I don't read a lot of comics, I'm sorry, you can bash me for that if you want. I'm just not super big on comic reading. For someone who hasn't done that, this was definitely very strange to me, because I always thought Spider-Man is Spider-Man. And we see in other movie universes, with Andrew Garfield, Tom Holland, so on and so forth, they don't really have any extra power sets, but Miles does. And Into the Spider-Verse is basically shoving him into a situation where he's encountering all of these Spider-Men and women from
and
different
animals.
Universes. And animals, yeah. There's a pig that was bit by it was a spider that was bit by a radioactive pig. Yeah, I watched that clip again yesterday, and I was like, I don't remember hearing that in the first movie.
Spider Cat.
Yeah, and this movie's got a few new of them too. So, but anyways, going into actually our thoughts on the new Across the Spider-Verse film, share some of your spoiler-free thoughts on this, dear Kindle.
Yeah, so I think before jumping into that, just understand kind of where this movie's at right now with critics' views. This is an IMDb at a 9. 9 out of 10 right now, and then a Rotten Tomatoes at 96%. So This is
high,
extremely
big.
high, extremely big, really, really good for superhero movies out there right now when it didn't seem like they were like, being able to push out really, really good content and push out really good ratings, especially with, I've mentioned it a couple times here, but that fatigue of having so much superhero type movies pushed out similar to each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of burning the world out on this types of movies. But this one had a new flavor, a new consistency to it. And then I'm a numbers guy as well too. So the budget for this movie as well, which is beautiful by the way, you can tell they spent a lot of time and a lot of money trying to design this.
Yeah.
Budget's only $100 million. Box office right now is close to 400. So
Yeah. So it blew its. I mean, obviously it was going to have high expectations, but it already like way overpaid for its
yeah, and it's got a long
overmade for its budget.
it's got a long ways to go as well too.
Yeah.
Through all this, but other than that, just first thoughts jumping into it is, I think this movie does a really good job of storytelling. I think
I agree.
The first movie was really, really good about telling the story of Miles Morales and where his struggles are and having to try to adapt. And it's a different story than what Peter Parker had as well too, because he didn't really have he had somewhat of a father figure die on him, but he actually still has his father and mother still to this day.
Yeah.
That watch over him. So it's shows a Peter Parker that has a lot more to lose compared to have already lost it all.
Yeah. It shows. Yeah. It shows a Spider-Man that has. Like it's not like an Uncle Ben. He kind of has an Uncle Ben in a sort of way, but from those of you who've seen the first movie, he has Uncle Aaron, who was revealed to be the Prowler, and he died.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. Like this film and the first one both are really good at storytelling, and not just storytelling, but actually caring about its characters, caring about its main protagonist. And this movie, this new one, actually dives quite a bit into Gwen Stacy as well, and giving her a lot more screen time.
Yeah, and Spider-Man 2099 as well too, and
yes, Miguel.
Yeah, a few others as well too, which it was really, really well needed because it was pretty much a mystery within the first one.
Mm-hmm.
But now we get to see everybody's stories. Now we get to see Miles, we get to see Gwen, a couple new Spider-Mans that were introduced that are pretty powerful as well too through this.
If you were wanting to see a little bit more of the same group from the first movie, it's not quite that. You get some cameos of the people from the first one, but for the most part, it is Miles and Gwen and some of Peter B. Parker. Is that what he like introduced himself as, like Peter B. Parker, who is Miles' mentor in the first movie.
Yep.
So you get a little bit more of that. You get some Miguel, which is Spider-Man 2099, and a bunch more, like a lot in this movie.
And then you get to explain more of like what the kind of the multiverse is, and even a shout out to the MCU's version of this as well too.
Yes.
So
yeah. So this whole thing is like about, just from a spoiler-free perspective, Miles Morales, he encounters a villain that's very odd, and I'm not going to go into detail about like the villain's background because that I definitely think that's spoiler territory and how it affects the future. But he's struggling with this, and he is wanting to see his old friends. He's wanting to see Gwen Stacy and all of his other friends that he made. He misses them dearly. And eventually, because of these like multiversal aspects, Gwen Stacy is able to be a part of this group of Spider-Men that hop across universes in order to fix problems. And so we definitely see more of her character. And through that, Miles essentially, they do so great with his character because the first film was really about finding out who Miles is, getting his background set up, like what makes him different from your average Spider-Man. Of course, he's young. He's kind of more coming into his own. This movie takes that another notch up, saying, okay, like not only is he just a different variation of Spider-Man, but he has a different perspective on things like entirely.
Yeah.
And I think like in a good way, for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think we're getting close to that. Yeah, we're at that 10-minute mark right now. So I think let's end it off here with kind of our official review of it. And then
Okay.
we'll go ahead and jump into spoilers. And if you want to stick around for the spoilers, of course, you're welcome to. But I'd recommend watching this movie. This was a really good movie. And it's pretty quick as well, too, in total. 2 hours, 10 minutes. Nothing too crazy. Not a 3-hour movie like a Zack Snyder's Justice League or something like that.
4.5 hours of Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not that. And it's fast paced. It does a great job of telling its story in its time.
Yeah.
So,
but I would give this an 8.8 out of 10 if I could rate it out of 8.8 popcorn bowls right in front of us right now out of 10. That's what I want to give this movie for official review.
Honestly, I pretty well agree. I'm going to go with an 8.7. Which is like, I mean, just slightly, just ever so slightly less. But I think this is a really good movie. It is definitely worth a watch. I think personally, my review is a little incomplete because of how the movie ends. And so for those of you who will go and watch this, you'll probably know why. And for those of you about to listen to these spoilers, I'll tell you in a little while.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. But thanks for sticking around for guys that didn't want to see a spoiler. We'll hopefully see you on for the rest of it after you watch the whole thing. So
going into spoiler territory,
we gotta get one of those little clickers or something like
okay,
that. Like that.
Take. I don't know what they're called. I should know that. I don't know what they're called.
Yeah.
But going into spoiler territory, the first thing I kind of wanted to touch on was they did something with Gwen Stacy's Spider-Woman. Sorry, my apologies. That I wasn't expecting because there was like some sort of anomaly happening, and it was a vulture from a completely different dimension, like the Renaissance era sort of like universe, and she's trying to deal with it, and all of a sudden Spider-Man 2099 and another Spider-Woman comes out as well to assist her, and they're like the multiverse jumpers basically. And all the while it explains more of her background in the fact that she didn't really like have like an Uncle Ben or anything that died. Peter Parker was her best friend in school, and he turned himself into the Lizard to try to just be special. And she didn't know it was him. And whenever the Lizard attacked like a high school prom, he ended up dying. And so her dad is the captain of the chief officer. So he's trying to hunt down her. And then it reveals actually when she's fighting the Vulture, like at that present time, that she actually has to reveal herself to him, which I thought was very emotional and in her dimension, because each of them have different art styles very specific towards the characters. For hers, emotions are told mostly through the changing of the colors of the screen. Like whenever it gets sad, like the colors will shift. Whenever it gets happy, the colors will shift. Whenever it gets intense, the colors will shift. And so that just makes things more intense. And so there's all these moments between her and her dad where she's conflicted about it, but she ends up revealing herself to her dad, and her dad is conflicted on whether to arrest her or not.
Yeah, because in one piece you mentioned there, and again, if people have seen this and know it as well too, it looked like she was drinking his blood, like Peter Parker's blood, like within the scene as well too, which is what the situation was happening. So the police chief, her father, believes that Spider-Woman was the one that killed Peter Parker out of cold blood.
Yeah.
And out of spite for some apparent reason or whatever else. So he's, as her father, he's having a conflict like, okay, this individual right here just killed my daughter's best friend, and then pulls the mask off. It's my daughter. I don't know how to react to this situation. And then that's when she gets the outing to, okay, I could either stay here and be with my father that is confused about what's going on right now, or I could be like these amazing superheroes and be the Spider-Woman that I need to be to help the multiverse.
Yeah. And yeah, she goes into that, and that's when she's able to re-encounter Miles because she wanted to go and say hi to him.
Yep.
And he encounters this villain called the Spot. And the Spot is like, it's like what? It's one of the guys that he threw a bagel at. He chucked a bagel at in the first movie. He was helping work on the collider.
Yep.
And it messed him up.
Yeah. He was building the collider, and I think what it was at the time was, and the situation is, yeah, of course, that they are able to transport a radioactive spider into the universe through the collider, and the spider was actually meant to bite him. The person that's the Spot. So it's like, okay, so I'm going to be the one that is going to be able to become the new Spider-Man because, again, they've had a life with Spider-Man, and
Yeah.
Spider-Man had passed away, so they need somebody that's going to be able to fill that gap. So these scientists are working super, super hard to see if they can somehow manufacture another Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And the only way they can, or the easiest way they can do it is go into another universe and pull it out. And that's where they do it. And they're supposed to give it to this individual. Again, Miles ends up stumbling into the whole situation, being bitten by the spider, and then has to get out of the situation because he's isn't where he needs to be at the time.
Right.
And again, that's what the story is. Bagel hits this guy, and it's kind of like, and the Spot's been made as a goofy character as well too.
Yeah,
which,
he's
even in like, I don't know if you remember like Spider-Man in the 90s, like in that 1990s,
Yeah.
like that's one of my favorite like villains within that series was the Spot, because it was just such like cool transitions where like Spider-Man would be trying to like swing around, and then he'd just like go through a hole, and then he'd go through another hole.
Right.
And
it's a very unique power set. Like it's kind of like teleportation, or almost like Doctor Strange's like rings,
yeah,
that kind of stuff. It's kind of like that, but he can like do it at will in multiple spots. Spot. Anyways, that was so bad. I'm so sorry. But he's getting used to his new powers. He like starts by like he starts by robbing a bank. He tries to rob an ATM at like some little store, and he's having trouble putting his hand into the machine and getting money out. But the point is that Miles Morales ends up catching him or going into conflict with him. The Spot wants to be his nemesis and wants him to take him seriously because he feels like that everything was taken from him, because since he's turned into his like this new form, it's like white with black spots. He feels like his entire life has been taken from him, so he's dedicating his life to making himself powerful enough to be Miles's main foe.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty interesting, actually. But he's kind of a goofy guy because he makes quips, and it doesn't seem like he's out to kill him or anything. It just seems like he's more out to prove himself, to compensate for what he's been deprived of now.
I will say I feel like there's like a giant character switch throughout the whole deal, which
There is.
I understand like there's going to be like a set off period, because like, again, the situation is Miles doesn't really care about the situation because he's got a lot of other pressing issues going on, because Spider-Man isn't really his like hugest passion. Like going to MIT and working on the multiverse is kind of
Right.
his passion and his main goal for life. And it's just like the Spider-Man stuff is just, it's kind of like dragging him down.
Yeah.
So he's just like disrespects the Spot so much to an extent that it's like, okay, now I'm going to go nuclear.
Yeah.
I still feel like, I don't know, I feel like that could have been set up a little bit better other than just hearing like a little backstory.
Right.
And it's like, okay, now that I told you that backstory, now I've went from a 3 to a 10.
Right. And yeah, he does definitely like flip a switch, because Gwen Stacy goes to say hi to Miles, but the majority of the reason why she's there is because she was sent there to go capture the Spot, because he's an anomaly and they need to capture him and basically correct it. And so she gets caught up in that, but she can't tell Miles about any of the multiverse stuff, like the multiverse group that she's in with like the spider citadel. I don't know what it's called. I forgot. But, and Miles is like, okay, well, I've been waiting to spend this time with you. I've been waiting, he obviously likes her. He got a big old crush. He's been waiting to spend time with her. He's been waiting to talk to her, to see his other friends. And then he's like, oh, well, I can be a part of this too. And she has to try to tell him no. And the whole time, like after a while, you realize because Spider-Man 2099, who's the main leader, um, he addresses Miles as like he himself is an anomaly because he wasn't supposed to be the Spider-Man of his universe.
Yep.
And
that's kind of why the cause of the first movie had even happened was
yes,
since it was an anomaly, the multiverse kind of like shifted in a weird way because that's just what it needed to happen. So there's just a lot of
Right.
issues that are coming up out of his universe right now
right.
that are
And yeah, and it just creates a lot of conflict between the characters. So, and then that's when they introduce, after a while, Miles tracks Gwen Stacy down and is trying to he hops universes, to try to help them capture the spot, and then they start introducing a couple other Spider-Man. They introduce, I don't know if I should say the name because I feel like I'm gonna butcher it. Pabarker, something like that. He's I cannot remember the name of the city, but a city in India.
Yeah,
A different universe. He's their Spider-Man.
yeah, it's based off Spider-Man India. They
Yeah.
had a comic series about it beforehand. But
And then Hobie, who is kind of like this like freedom fighter,
rock star type, like
kind of like anti-government sort of guy, more of a freelancer. He's basically Spider-Man punk. And what did you think about like those two characters, just in general?
okay, like Spider-Man India. Again, we don't see too much of it. He doesn't really speak at all.
He says some funny lines about how he thinks that Miles and Gwen, like, oh, are they going to get together? Or are they going to not? That's kind of his whole spiel.
Yeah, but it's like you don't really see too much of his personality at all. Like, I don't know. I just Spider Punk. I think is that what they call him? Like Spider Punk.
I think that's the name of the character, but I don't know if they ever call him that.
Yeah, I was kind of indifferent about that a little bit. Like,
I was too.
It just felt like it was weirdly placed within a Spider-Man or superhero type franchise of like,
Yeah,
get the fascists. Yeah, like, okay, we're fighting a mysterious polka dot man.
yeah,
That probably has no connection whatsoever to.
yeah. He works for like the multiverse people, but also kind of doesn't want to.
And how are you working for the multiverse type situation anyway?
Yeah,
If you hate fascism and government and all this when you're a part of the Spider-Man government.
yeah, yeah.
That's like, I don't know. I feel like it's like Ron Swanson from like Parks and Rec. It's like, I hate government, but I work for
here.
the government. Yeah.
I would work all day if that would mean that nothing got done. Ron Swanson's the GOAT. I think he is a kind of a oddly placed character because I think he's more used for like a plot device because he has to end up setting up the fact that they have like these watches that they're given in order to help hop universes. And I feel like they use him as more of a plot device because he somehow either built one or gave it to Gwen, something like that, so that can be used near the end of the movie.
Yeah.
But Miles goes to the Citadel. He's meeting all these spider people. We see the Scarlet Spider, which is Ben O'Reilly. He narrates everything out loud, and he's like depressed. And they're like, "How are you doing?" He's like, "Not right now. I'm brooding," and which is funny. But then they actually start to see some of the anomalies from other things, and they even show like Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire. I don't know if they show Tom Holland. If they did, I didn't catch it, and that's my bad. But I know they made a direct reference to him by voice line, which is like, oh, like don't even tell me about that nerd from Earth like 199999.
Yeah, when the wizard
Doctor Strange.
He says Doctor Strange by name.
Yeah. And there's a lot of good funny moments. There's a lot of good banter between a lot of these characters. And you even see that Donald Glover, or Childish Gambino, for those of you who like rap, he is he is the Prowler in some universe. And it shows like the live action like person among all these animated people. And I thought that was a cool nod. And And I did like how they actually showed a clip of Andrew Garfield, like his Spider-Man, longer than the others because one, they're promoting their own product. Because I thought that was interesting at first because they're like, oh, like they've shown all the other Spider-Man. They showed a little bit of Toby, Andrew. They show Andrew like way more, which still isn't long, but way more because it's like, oh, here's our product. Here's Sony. Look at us. But yeah, there's a lot of cool cameos in this movie.
Yeah, I think with the cameos aspect of things, I'm just going to go point blank honest here. I didn't much care for it. Like,
oh, okay.
Like it was okay, it was cool and all, but like that was the slowest part of the whole entire movie. And this was a movie I felt like that really, why I rated it so high was because of its storyline. And don't take away from that storyline for nostalgia purposes. Like, I understand the purpose of doing it, but if you have that strong of a story, just stick with that story.
Yeah.
I don't think we needed to slow it down or go into all this. And I don't know. It could also be a possibility. I'm not a big fan of the whole entire like Spider Citadel, like the Rick and Morty Citadel of Spider-Man. That even though like Spider-Man's always like meant to be like a work alone type superhero. Like even in early comic books, like he couldn't fit in with the Fantastic Four because he was too thought about being alone too much and fighting alone. And I don't want to bring other people down with me because when I bring other people into the situation, they all die.
Yeah, because Spider-Man himself has more villains, I think, individually than most all other heroes do.
Yeah.
Like it feels like he has to deal with more people and more things. And because in a lot of things, he's like a teenager or a high schooler, things get really complicated. And so for him, it probably is difficult. Like he joins the Avengers sometimes, backs out. He fights with Daredevil a few times, backs out. Fights with Deadpool a few times, always backs out. He never really sticks with one thing. And because that's kind of his way of doing things, he's more of like a person that's like, I can do this. I can carry the burden, you know, and he's willing to work with other people. But it's the fact that like, you know, this big citadel, I kind of agree. I don't think, once again, you all should know me by now. I don't think movies should be run on nostalgia. Spider-Man is, I don't want to be a hypocrite here. How do I word this? How do I not dig myself a hole? Spider-Man seems to be a little different. Whereas like for something like No Way Home, the nostalgia is just an added bonus, but the villains and the story they tell adds to Tom Holland's character specifically and the overall story. And that is why I think No Way Home is a phenomenal film.
Yeah.
But it does, across the Spider-Verse does have the similar problem of it kind of shows you too much at once, and that it fills up a lot of screen time just trying to give you cameos and funny lines from characters or just seeing a certain characters you might want to see. Whereas it could be spending more time actually being with people like Miles and Gwen.
Very deep characters.
Yeah.
And I think honestly, and kudos to just the culture of the Japanese in total, just like being the best at making really great deep characters.
Right.
With Sony being a Japanese company, of course, but like you almost felt like a little anime-esque type when we're talking about the storyline of things. But and kind of to your point too on the nostalgia aspect, one thing I wanted to talk about at least with that is like I feel like with the Spider-Man and with No Way Home, like we've already milked that cow. We've already brought in all the other Spider-Mans into it. It's like, oh, this is all connected at this point now. It's like, okay, now let's go ahead and try to shoot some more nostalgia into it, the same exact quantity of it. And it's like, at that point, it's like we're milking. The cow is empty at that point, guys. Like, no need to be given kudos of like, oh, there's other Spider-Man movies that we're all connected somehow.
It's like, we know
get
that.
it.
Like, we know that now.
I'm blind. We get it.
Can't you see I'm blind? I agree. Yeah. It just like after a while, it's going to run its course because you can't expect your audience to stay completely engaged through just throwing cameos at them, because eventually they'll rewatch these movies. And that's a big part of my ability to review and watch movies is how rewatchable is this movie?
Yeah.
And if you fill up a lot of your screen time with just pauses and moments for audience to cheer and clap, that only works for so long. And this is something that No Way Home actually did, because somebody pointed this out to me. If you rewatch No Way Home and you look at the moments with Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire when they step in through the portals, in that movie, there's dramatic pauses there that are specifically placed there for audiences to cheer. But if you watch it with just yourself and it's dead silent, it's awkward.
Yeah.
And so that only works for so long.
Yeah.
So, but what did you think about the stuff with Miles Morales and all the Spider-Man's like opinions on like his dad and things like that?
Yeah, no, I think that's
If you want
where
to explain that.
yeah, that's where it gets good, and that's what I want to talk about, like why this was rated so highly. I think in both of our opinions was the whole entire story aspect of it. So we talked about Gwen's a little bit, and this is why like Gwen is like super reluctant, and, like tells Miles like, "Hey, don't tell your parents that you're Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Then whatever it takes, do not tell them," because that was her personal experience of like
Ruined her life.
that
she
ruined her
thinks.
life at that point. I'm just like, I told my family, and now they all turn their back on me. So your family will not love you anymore if they figure out you're Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's all I have in Miles' mind. My family is all that I have at that point. So when he gets to the point where he starts to learn about what makes Spider-Man Spider-Man, it has to be a giant event. And again, the people that have seen this, you guys know, but the idea is that every Spider-Man has to be developed by a death of somebody important in their life.
Yes.
And they kind of just state out loud that, yeah, it's going to be your dad.
Yeah.
The police chief always dies.
Because like he already had Aaron die.
Yep.
But for some reason that wasn't the one. It was supposed to be his dad. And it's supposed to be also connected with being the captain of a squad for the police.
Yep.
So the captains die. And it's like that for people who aren't even related to the captain, like Peter Parker's with like Gwen Stacy's and their dads who die, things like that. So yeah, it's all predicated on the fact that somebody important must die for you in order to not jumpstart, but essentially
Motivate.
get a real like home run swing into like becoming Spider-Man.
Yeah. And that's what, and he has to learn this fact that his father's going to die and that he can't do anything about it. And then he has to deal with that.
Yeah.
So then he gets to a point where it's like, well, I need to do something, because that's what Spider-Man does, is we protect and we save and we help other people out.
Yes. And we don't just sit back and accept that somebody else is going to die, because he always says like, I can do both.
Yeah.
And I think that's really reminiscent of something that Tom Holland did in No Way Home, where he's like, I don't have to let these villains die in their universes. I can save our universe and save them.
Yep.
And because that's what's, and that Toby and Andrew were big supporters of that. Like, yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah.
Like sometimes bad things happen. Sometimes people die. But at the end of the day, like we try to save people. And in all three of these films, all three of Tom Holland's films, all two of Andrew Garfield's, all three of Toby's, this is a very, like, this is a common theme and a common thing they all do. So it is consistent with them.
Yeah,
and so I
show
think
mercy.
yeah. And so now Miles Morales is in that squad of people
Yep.
who's like, we can do both. And everyone's telling him, no, you can't. You need to go back home. We're sending you back because you're going to cause trouble. Even the Spectacular Spider-Man, which those of you who watched that show, which I did, that's like my Spider-Man. That is, even he was supportive of it. And other people who Miles knew were all just telling him like, this is how it's got to be.
Yeah.
But he's like, nope, I refuse.
Yep. And then that's where it gets into that really, well, first let's talk about Miguel's story. Miguel's like, hey, I know this from personal experience.
Yeah.
I built this travel device where I could travel to different universes where I had a family and I had a daughter, and me in that universe died. So I went back to be there for that family, and the whole entire world ended up disappearing because of an anomaly. And that's what, they don't talk about that enough, I think. But
yeah,
basically that it just throws off the balance of time so much that that universe disappears.
Yeah, it just falls apart.
So he gets into that. So that's Spider-Man 2099's background, but he gets a hold of Miles and slamming him against that train type deal. And it's like,
Yeah.
you are a mistake. You are a failure. You are not meant to be Spider-Man. Your Spider-Man was meant to die.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it was supposed to be. And you've done all this and have really caused an absolute heck of a time for me and
Right.
my group and stuff of you just being here. And I'm showing you mercy, keeping you alive right now.
Yeah.
But you want to ruin your universe and you want to ruin all this because I've been there and I've seen all this and I've destroyed countless universes and I want you to learn from my mistakes, but
Yeah.
you're not going to do it.
Which is honestly, I don't necessarily blame him. That's kind of an interesting point. He's like, I understand you want to save your father, but is that worth the cost that could happen? And people question it like, do you know for sure that universe would collapse if that were to be the case?
Yep.
And he doesn't give a straight answer.
Oh, he's just like the algorithm.
He just says, I don't want to find out.
Yeah, the algorithm thinks that's what it's going to do.
Yeah.
Like that's what they have this AI, of course, that's able to predict when these situations happen. And this AI predicts that if he doesn't die, that's what's going to happen here.
Right. And then all this time, Spot has been able to hop dimensions and stuff, and he's getting his powers. And he finally gets into a collider in a different universe and, becomes like Super Spot, basically. And Miles sees the vision. He sees a vision of Spot, like, destroying everything.
Yeah.
And him saying, like, I'll take away everything that you love, which is that flip that was kind of switched for him. But so now they have Spot to deal with, which he thinks is connected to his dad's potential death. So he thinks he can basically kill two birds with one stone. But yeah, he's backed up on the train. He escapes the Citadel, and there's a bunch of Spider-Man. They're all pointing at each other first because he's like, hey, stop Spider-Man. And they're all like, you. And so they're all trying to take him down. Miles escapes. There's even like a Tyrannosaurus Rex Spider-Man. That was probably one of the coolest ones. But yeah, he gets on the train and then he tells him, like, you were a mistake, all the stuff that you said. And I like that Miles, like, said, I'm sick and tired of people telling me how I'm supposed to live my life. And he said, I'm going to do my own thing. I don't want to be like every other Spider-Man. I want to be me.
Yeah,
I don't want to. I can.
I don't want destiny to decide what I want to do.
Yeah. So then he eventually goes. He comes back to the Citadel after turning invisible and is trying to get himself sent back to his universe. But the spider that bit him, the DNA inside of him, is not from his universe. So it sends him to the universe that spider's from. And then the twist happens, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah. No, cool twist on the end of it. He goes back and sees his mom again, explains about being Spider-Man and all this. She's kind of confused on what the heck's going on with it. And then ends up meeting his uncle's alive in this universe, but his father isn't alive. And uncle kind of figures out weird things are going on, whacks him in the head, takes him back there, figures out that Miles Morales in this universe ends up being
the Prowler,
or the villain.
Which I think is super cool.
I thought it was really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I like even just the design of him as well too. He comes down, he's got the braids, and he's got like that more like dead look in his eye.
Yeah.
Like, I've killed a couple people before type look of like, yeah, I'm a bad guy.
And so the movie kind of ends with a few things happening. Like Spider-Man 2099, Spider-Woman, and the Scarlet Spider are tracking down Miles Morales. Gwen Stacy, who didn't help capture Miles Morales, but also didn't help take him down. She got conflicted, and she ended up getting like Spider-Man Noir, all the people from the first movie. She tried to go get them together to try to go help him. And then Miles is stuck in that universe, that the other one that he's in, with his alternate self. That's the Prowler. And it ends with all of that being set up and then Spot being wherever it is he's at.
Yep.
So we have like 4 things going on. So this movie ends on that cliffhanger, and it is a cliffhanger. And I am excited for the next one.
Yeah, no, I am as well too. But I just like, if you were to take out a lot of that nostalgia, just milking at that point in the middle, I feel like you could have put another 20 minutes on this movie and you could have completed it all full circle.
Yeah. I would have liked to have seen more of the other Spider-Man that were really heavily marketed for this movie, like the Spider-Man India and Punk Spider-Man, and even Spider-Man 2099. I feel like with those three specifically, they could have spent more screen time with them and making them more involved rather than just, oh, here's just another variant that we hop over with.
Yep.
And they're kind of quirky and they help a little bit. Like, I feel like there could have been either more time dedicated to that or even more time dedicated to Miles and Gwen's friendship and their relationship of sorts.
Yeah. No, for sure. And last little like kind of complaints I had, just nitpicky stuff, of course, is going to be talking about, again, it just felt weird that all the Spider-Mans were all in unison of thought about what the situation needs to be.
Yeah. No, like hardly anyone questions it.
Yeah. Nobody questions it at all. Even though it's only the story of one person. But I don't know. I just feel like with all those other Spider-Mans, like if you would have given the chance to save Uncle Ben, would you not have done it?
Yeah.
And it's like, what is the worst thing that can happen? Why can't we just try it out here then?
It makes me curious to think how Andrew and Toby and Tom would have felt after going through all their loss as well.
But at the same time, too,
maybe we'll get to find out.
It doesn't even matter then, too, because what it looks like is Spider-Man 2099 makes all these other Spider-Mans look like fodder.
Yeah.
Except for Miles Morales is the only one that can compete with him in strength-wise, just because he has 35 different other powers other than being Spider-Man.
Because he's got every power.
But that's what I felt kind of weird about. And like you talked about the Incredible Spider-Man, or Incredible Spider-Man, right?
Spectacular Spider-Man.
Spectacular Spider-Man. Like, you just make him fodder underneath Spider-Man 2099.
He's just a guy that says a line. So,
yeah. But you make him fodder underneath this chieftain Spider-Man, even though Spider-Mans aren't supposed to have a chieftain because they're kind of solo people. Yeah. But like, I don't know. I just felt like you focused too heavy on the Spider-Verse aspect of things, and made it like this big government type association. And then that's how you gave the power to punk rock Spider-Man, which I didn't much care for in the first place.
Yeah.
But man, did you write a good story with understanding Gwen's story?
Yeah.
Miguel's story, continuing to further Miles' story aspect of things.
It was a really good job. And I felt like this is, even though we have some complaints about it, this is still like, I mean, based on our ratings, this is still a great movie.
This is still a fantastic
really good movie.
Yeah.
And it's still better than half the other in my opinion, half the other Spider-Man movies.
Oh, exactly.
This is still really good. But that's why I feel like my review is a little incomplete, because this is a cliffhanger and it kind of feels like I can't properly judge Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 without witnessing Part 2 first. Or the same thing with, I cannot believe I'm making this reference, I'm so sorry, Twilight. Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 1 and Part 2. And and like the Hunger Games, things like that, where they come out in multiple parts and you can't really judge them too early because you never know when the next one's going to change your mind about the prior one.
Yep.
So I really hope that they nail this second one. I'm sure it'll be good, but I really hope they nail it on the head with this one.
You guys have done a good job so far. And I know I've given a lot of hate to Sony about making Spider-Man too inaccessible in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I think you guys did a really good job, Sony. If you guys are paying attention to this, I know you don't, but
but this is a gem.
But this is a gem. Kudos to you guys for putting this on here. You did really, really well, like with making it Spider-Man itself and kind of keeping the MCU out of it too. So
I know that you want to do stuff like Morbius and Kraven the Hunter and Venom, and that's fine. But pay attention to when your audience clamors for an animated Spider-Man film that outperforms like the majority of the other Spider-Man films, critically and box office wise, like pay attention because that stuff matters.
And you guys have already 4x your money at that point. So you guys have already 4x your money, and it's only been a couple weeks now at this point.
Yeah.
Like, you guys know what you're doing here, and I know that's why you made it into a part 2 as well. So who are us to talk business to a group like that?
No,
so
we're totally qualified.
Yeah, exactly. But No, yeah, I think it's really good.
Please go see this movie.
Please go see this movie. I really do like Spider-Man outside of the MCU as well.
Yeah, it's a really good one. But yeah, thanks for thanks for sticking around. Sorry, had a
R.I.P. Stan Lee.